Okay, so the second part of the reason why you came is our amazing guests tonight. We have the honor of welcoming up Michael Shannon and Tracy Letts to the stage. Come on up.
They told us to just start it off, so I guess you're probably wondering how this happened. How two guys from the non-equity theater scene in Chicago got a movie made. I met Tracy when I was 16 years old, so we're going on knowing each other about 30 years. Wow. And he played my dad, which was weird because he was 25 at the time. So he would have been 9 when you had me, but we went with it anyway. It was at this little theater up in Evanston called the Next Lab. It's not there anymore. And yeah, and then after we did this play, Fun and Nobody, Tracy said, I've been writing my own play for a while now and doing readings of it now and then. I was wondering if you'd want to do a reading of it. And that was Killer Joe. Killer Joe. And so we did a reading of it. And I was like, hot damn, this is cool. So then you allowed me to perform in it at the Next Lab, the same venue where we did Fun and Nobody. And that ran at the Next Lab for about 8 months, right? And then we knew this woman from Scotland, Morgan, is that her name? And she said, you guys should do this at the Edinburgh Festival. So we went to the Edinburgh Festival. We did it at the Travers Theater. At the same time, by the way, that an actor named Tom Courtney was doing a one-man show called Moscow Station. That was pretty cool. And then we went to London and did it at the Bush Theater. And then we went to the West End with Killer Joe. And while we were there, a woman who ran a theater called the Gate Theater, Rose Garnett, came up and said, Tracy, you're great. I want to do your next play at my theater. And so what happened then? Had you already been writing?
When Killer Joe went to London, I was doing a play as an actor. I was in Picasso de la Panagile, the Steve Martin play, and we had taken it to California. It was my first equity gig, and I needed the scratch, so I wasn't able to go to London and work with you guys while you were putting the show up over there, but I got a week's vacation, and I went over. And while I was over there, Timothy McVeigh bombed the Murrah Federal Building. And I heard the report on a radio in a cafe in London, and I thought it was satire. I didn't believe it. I thought it was English satire. And and it was a real kick in the stomach, you know, especially because I'm from Oklahoma, and the idea at the time, the idea of domestic terrorism, I mean, it's not so unusual now, but at the time it was bizarre. And so I started exploring that around the same time that our friend Rose asked us if we wanted to bring another show over to London. We didn't really have a theater. We had started at the Next, but they were not sponsors of our trip to England. So it was really just the actors in the show and the director, Wilson Milam, and myself. And they wanted to know if we wanted to bring another show over. So I was kind of kicking around the initial idea for Bug at that time. And I wrote the role of Peter for Mike. I haven't written a lot of roles for specific actors, but in this case I did. And I wrote the role of Peter for Mike, and we rehearsed it in Chicago, and then we wound up taking it over to the Gate Theater, which is not the famous Gate Theater in Dublin. This is a pub theater called the Gate Theater in Notting Hill. And we went there in the fall of 1996. And we did the play, and it was all right. I don't know that it was great. It was a first production of a new, challenging play, and we were working on it. And it had quite a life from there, because the first American production was at Woolly Mammoth in DC with a different cast, but the same director. And I was trying to work on it and fix the play because it had some problems. I was still working on it, and we eventually you wound up doing it again.
Well, didn't it go, it went to Boston too, right? Was it
I don't
DC?
think so.
It was just DC?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, and then what was odd about Bug, seeing as how Tracy and I were Chicago people, was that nobody had done it in Chicago. Because you said we did it in London in 1996, and 5 years went by and nobody had done it in Chicago. Nobody in Chicago even really knew about it. So I belonged to a theater called Red Orchid Theater in Old Town. And I went to Guy, who was artistic director at the time, Guy Van Swearingen, and I said, I can't believe nobody's done Bug in Chicago. This is kind of absurd. And Guy's like, yeah, we should do it. And you agreed to let us do it, and then we did it. And Dexter Bullard directed it, and thank you. And we were doing Bug at Red Orchid Theater when 9/11 happened. That was nuts. That was deep. So, and then while we were doing it at Red Orchid Theater, a fella named Scott Morphy, who had helped bring Killer Joe to New York, which is a whole other story, but a producer from New York, he saw it at Red Orchid, and he said, I want to bring this to New York.
Yeah, I had tried to get him to do it in New York after Killer Joe, and he wasn't interested in it. But when he saw the production of Red Orchid, he said, I didn't realize it was funny. I didn't know it was funny. When you just read it off the page, you can't tell it's funny. So he saw it. It's hysterically funny. And he said he wanted to move it. And by that point, I don't know when I had done the work. I did some more work on the play, and I really gotten the play. Really gotten it down to the bone at that point. It had gotten really strong. So then a different production of the play, but I made a choice to go with Dexter.
Well, yeah, I was just about to say, I think give Dexter a little credit there too, because I think he really kind of, I mean, not that Wilson is a great director too. He directed Killer Joe in the first couple of productions of Bug, but I think Dexter really cracked something in there.
Yeah, we were a little more simpatico about the play. So eventually we got a production in New York, 2003, 4. Yeah, it was the first production at the Barrow Street Theater in New York, and it was a slightly different cast, though the same director. Amanda Plummer was playing Agnes in the production, but she didn't make it. I mean, she's alive. But she kind of, I don't know how to describe it.
She walked out of the theater after our final dress rehearsal.
Yeah,
We
that's
finished
the
the
way
run
it was.
through. We went upstairs for notes, and everyone was there except Amanda. And Dexter said, "Where's Amanda?" And the stage management said, "She's not here. She left." And this was our final dress rehearsal. I mean, we were literally, I think the first preview was the next day.
Yeah. So she left. And we were scrambling, and the Shannon Cochran, who had done the original production in London, we called her and said, "You busy?" And she did an amazing, I don't know that I've ever seen an actor do anything quite like it. She flew to New York and was in front of critics in 72 hours in a play she had not done in 7 years.
Wow.
She was fantastic, and the play was a big hit, and it ran in New York. It ran for about a year, close to a year.
And then a fella named Billy Friedkin came to see the play. Was enamored with it.
Yeah, I was doing a production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, not the same production that we did at Steppenwolf, an earlier production I was doing at the Alliance in Atlanta. And while I was there, I got a call. This is William Friedkin. And I thought it was a joke. Again, I thought the radio report was satire. I didn't believe it was
He
Billy.
thinks his whole life is a joke. He thinks this is a joke.
And it was Billy, and he said, "I just wanted to tell you I saw you play, and how much I loved it. I took friends to see it, and I think it's great stuff." And I said, "Thank you very much." And we got off the phone, and he called the next day and said, "I can't get it out of my head. I want to make a movie of it." And I I said, great. And he said, can you come out to see me in Bel Air? We can talk about doing this. And so after the play closed, he flew me to Los Angeles, and we had our first meeting to talk about this film. And Billy, the first thing he said to me was, well, Billy had directed a couple of film adaptations of plays, notably The Birthday Party, an adaptation of the Pinter play, a great film of that with Robert Shaw and Patrick Macnee, and then he also did a historic film of Boys in the Band, a great movie. And so he had some experience translating plays to film, and the first thing he said to me is, first, do no harm. He said, I like the play, I'm interested in the play, I don't want you to do a lot of bullshit, I want you to write the screenplay, I don't want you to do a lot of bullshit opening it up, wouldn't make any sense to do that. You worry about telling the story, and then I'll worry about how to shoot it, and that's very much the spirit we entered into it with. I should say that it's hard to get a movie like this made. It was hard then, it's hard now. It's always been hard to get a movie like this made. I don't remember what the budget was for Bugs. It wasn't much. He asked me who I would want in the cast, and I said, well, I want my cast. And he said, well, you know that's not going to happen. I can't get the movie made like that. I have to have somebody, not necessarily even to sell tickets, but somebody I can go to, the people who are going to give us the money to make this and say, I've got this person. So I don't ever remember hearing another name other than Ashley's when he was discussing Agnes. I don't think another actress ever came up. Ashley signed up to do it. And from the beginning, Billy said, I want Michael Shannon. I saw him do the play, and I've got to have Michael Shannon. And Billy really fought for Michael. The people who did put up the money, they were fine with Ashley, but they wanted somebody else in the role of Peter, and Billy really stood his ground, and he's the reason that Michael's in the film, because Billy just dug his heels in.
So that's how a couple of guys were kind of knocking around the non-equity theater scene in Chicago made a movie.
They shot it in New Orleans. I wasn't there for most of the
Well,
film.
actually, this is interesting. In Metairie, we shot it in Metairie, and I showed up, and Billy said, "You want to see where we're going to shoot this?" I said, "Okay." And we went to this high school, and we walked into the gymnasium of a high school, and he said, "This is it." And they had built the room in this high school gymnasium. He said, "I'm going to get Ashley, and we're going to run through some stuff." And I was standing there, and it was during the summer, so school wasn't in session, but they had the wrestling team in, and they were running the bleachers, you know, they were doing the stairs. So me and Ashley were in there doing this very quiet scene, and you just heard these young men thundering up and down the bleachers. I'm like, are they going to be there when we're shooting? And he said, I don't think so. I don't know. Something else, before we open it up to questions that you might find interesting. I think this might be the most interesting thing about trivia-wise, is the fire at the end of the movie is a real fire that went terribly wrong. The special effects people were, I hope they're not here, were imbeciles. And they put way too much of this stuff around, and they set a really intense fire, and the cinematographer's eyebrows were singed off of his face, and we all ran out of the building. We ran out of the high school gymnasium screaming with our hands in the air, but the camera kept rolling. And the tilt up, which is the last thing you see in the movie, there's nobody there. The camera's doing that itself. And the footage survived. So I think that's pretty badass.
So, as you...
One,
go ahead.
one more thing before you open it up. I should say something about the release of the film, too. The movie came out, I don't remember exactly what year it came out, but Lionsgate just made a disastrous decision after another they decided to publicize the hell out of it. They really spent a lot of money on ads. They opened it opposite Pirates of the Caribbean, one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. But they spent a lot of money on ads because at the time Lionsgate had a real thing going with the Saw franchise. And so they didn't know what the hell they had with this movie, so the strategy for them was, let's con those Saw kids into thinking this is another kind of Saw movie. So they came up with these ridiculous ads. They live in your blood. And they feed on your brain. Of course, the people who might be interested in a movie like this just stayed the hell away because they weren't going to see a Saw movie. And the kids who did like the Saw movies went to see this and said, what the fuck am I looking at? And it was really disastrous. It did really poorly. Most of the reviews were terrible. But I think even at the time, there was a sense, me, Billy, Michael, I think all of us had a sense of, yeah, that's a shame that that's the way that happened, but this movie's going to find its audience. Eventually, people will find their way to it.
And they did. And I will say, just on that note of the Saw, I was doing a little research on the film, and I believe the set designer that was hired for this film had done Eli Roth's Hostel, which is in that vein of kind of torture porn, for those who know those movies. So anyway, we've got some great questions here from the audience that they pre-wrote. This one, I think, is from Eddie. Why did you... There it is. Why did you name the play, which then was also used in the movie, Bug?
Well, it's a better question than you think it is. I mean, aside from the fact that you don't call Jaws the sheriff of Amity Village, but rather you call it Jaws because there's a big fucking shark. So you call it Bug because there's bugs that are eating you. But there is another reason, actually. First of all, there are some other films titled Bug. There's a pretty bad 70s sci-fi bug movie called Bug. I was aware of that when I called it that, but there used to be a speech of Peters. You remember this in the early going? There was a speech of Peters, his last sort of summation of what's going on in the world, where he referred to, in passing, he referred to Bankers for a United Globe as really the people who were behind all of the problems in the world. And we actually did that in previews, and I remember we would, that would just kind of go flying by people, Bankers for a United Globe, and every night one guy in the audience would go, "Ha!" And I thought, well, it's really not worth it, so I actually.
I've got another question here from Katie in the audience. Michael, what scene was the hardest for you to film between you and Ashley?
I don't know. I loved working with Ashley so much. I was scared going into it. It was kind of strange because when I got there, particularly because Tracy wasn't there, I was the only person who had actually done the play, and I was surrounded by a bunch of people. And Billy, as much as he loved the play, I was surrounded by a bunch of rookies, at least in terms of bug standards, and I was also used to rehearsing. When we did the play for like 3 or 4 weeks, and Ashley really just had to kind of show up. I mean, we kind of fumbled around with it for a couple of days, but it's not the same as rehearsing a play. So, it's interesting. Ashley was going through a very interesting period in her life, I think, when she was making this movie, and she had a lot of, as we say, ammunition, I think. She had a lot on her. And I think that really comes across. So, anytime you gotta start taking your clothes off something in front of somebody, that's kind of weird. Particularly because at the time, husband was around, that race car driver. He didn't like me much. But no, she was a delight. I mean, I was so impressed with her, how prepared she was, and not just knowing her lines, but really having put together this character, her version of this character, and not really needing much help or anything.
All right. I think this is a question for you, Michael. Which aspect of your character did you find it easiest to empathize with?
Huh. Well, I think what I always say to people about this story, to me, is that Bug is a love story. Bug is about love, to me. I don't know what it's about to Tracy or anybody else, but to me, I look at it as how intimate can two people get, and in the process of getting that intimate, can they do so without destroying one another? And you know, the thing about somebody earlier, I was out in the lobby and someone said, yeah, this Bug and Take Shelter are very similar. And I'm like, no, not really. But because Take Shelter, that you're talking about a man who is a family man, a husband, a father, and you know, he's just working at a sand mill or wherever the hell he's working. But this guy is truly a mysterious person. Like and you're never quite sure. You know, me and Billy used to argue about it all the time. He's like, is this true? Is he lying? Billy's like, he's lying. He's lying about all of that. I'm like, no, he's not. But you don't know. Like, I don't know the answer to that question. Billy doesn't know the answer to the question. I don't even know if Tracy knows the answer to that question. So it's like this, it's really beautiful. I guess what I empathize with most is the question of Peter Evans, of who he actually is. Because I'm a question too.
Okay, Tracy, I think this one might be more for you. What challenges did you face in trying to get this from the stage to the film?
Well, I was helped immensely by Billy and his faith in me and his faith in the material. You know, so much of the time when you are taking a play and you're turning it into a film, and it's not a natural transition. Plays really shouldn't become movies. They don't make for very good movies. You really should try to avoid that if you can. And one of the reasons is because you're always just, well, why don't we move this movie outside? Because it's a movie, and movies move, and they have to move. But movies can do a lot of different things. Movies can, a lot of movies can live in the eyes and the minds of the character, the dialogue they speak, the feelings they have for each other. Sometimes movies are not about what's going on scenically or cinematographically. So what I really benefited from was Billy's trust in the material. Billy trusted that the material itself would hold an audience without having to take it outside or put them on horseback or some nonsense. So, and I have to say, to this day, I don't think I've dealt with a person in the movie business as a writer who's dealt with me more respectfully. And that's not just me, by the way. I mean, that I've known other writers who've worked with Billy, and they all say the same thing. He's deeply respectful of the writer and the writer's process. They're kind of heroes to Billy, and so I just give it up to him. He's a good one.
Let me follow on that then, because there were some other questions in here, and I don't want to ask those specific, but do you think anybody else could have directed this?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did Billy do?
Billy did great. You know, I look at both the films of Bug and Killer Joe, and to me they look like Bill Friedkin movies. I don't think of them as Tracy Letts Plays. You know, we're in rehearsal for Bug right now at Steppenwolf, and I just came from rehearsal earlier today, which is weird because I haven't looked at this play in over 20 years. So it's weird to come from that rehearsal in here. The experience of watching a play is very different than the experience of watching a film. They're just not They're just not the same. You can't sit in a play and watch Michael Shannon do this while you're eating popcorn. You can't do it. But you can do that in a film because the relationship between the screen and the audience is very different than the relationship than the live performers in an audience. So they're never going to be the same. To me, those movies, both of this movie and Killer Joe look to me like William Friedkin movies. They focus on the things Billy is interested in. They focus the focus of those films. Billy himself is a guy with a lot of interests and obsessions and a weird, sick sense of humor. And yet a great humanist, I think. And so the movies focus on what Billy's interested in. And so they're very much Billy's movies.
Thank you. All right, Michael, you're primarily known for dramatic roles, but yet you've also exhibited incredible comedic timing in such movies as Knives Out and The Night Before. Do you want to do more comedy? This is from Isaac.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a frustrating answer, but to me, they're not so separate, really. I mean, I find a lot of, like for example, Tracy's writing, whether it's Killer Joe or Bug, or pretty much anything Tracy writes, is an extraordinary combination of comedy and drama. Same thing with Revolutionary Road. When I did that, I was like, this is very funny. These scenes are very funny. What this guy is saying is very funny. Same with the majority of things that happen on Boardwalk Empire. I mean, the guys, when they were writing and directing Boardwalk Empire, particularly towards the end, it was like they were making like the Three Stooges. That's the way they looked at it. It's like, what funny shit can we do to him, and then he'll have to act funny, and we'll laugh while we're editing it. And then everyone comes up and says, oh, it's so intense. I'm like, well, okay. And that's not what they thought when they were doing it, but I'm glad you thought so. So, I mean, like, Tracy and I, this is another little piece of trivia. We used to be in an improv group here in Chicago called Bang Bang, Spontaneous Theater. We used to do it every Wednesday night up at the No Exit Cafe.
For years.
In Rogers Park. It actually, there was a whole rise and fall of Bang Bang. Because we do it at No Exit, but then we started doing it at Famous Door, if anybody remembers what that was. And then we did it at Remains. And at one point, Bang Bang, it seemed like there were like 100 people in Bang Bang. We had a guy from the Bob Newhart show in Bang Bang. And then it just kind of dwindled away to dust, as things do. But anyway, yeah, I don't really look at it like a fork in the road so much, you know? I find comedy in everything.
All right, I'm gonna.
Before you get to the next question, I have another fun, it just occurred to me as you were telling the story. So this movie went to the Cannes Film Festival. And Mike and I, because we hadn't had a lot of experience in the movie business, we wanted to go. We wanted to go to the Cannes Film Festival, but the studio had no interest in sending me and Mike to Cannes. So we just went. And we didn't realize you can't do that because you need a place to stay. It's actually really hard to find a place to stay in Cannes. So we got ourselves to London. We have friends in London. We flew to London actually to stay with the person who originally asked us to do this. And we got to London and we said to her, we said, well, we're just going to go to Cannes and we're going to sleep on the beach. It's May. It's south of France, it'll be all right, we're just gonna sleep on the beach. And she said, no, you can't sleep on the beach. So she had a friend who was screening a movie, an X-rated film at Cannes, and she said, she's staying in a nice villa, she thinks she can put you guys up. So we went to Cannes, and we wound up staying in this ridiculous place. It was an extraordinary, I mean, this place looked down on Elton John's villa.
Felt like we were like in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. But also another funny thing about that is I remember that my flight to Cannes was late. So I literally walked in to the premiere of Bug as it was ending. I walked in, the credits were rolling, and the next thing I knew there was a spotlight in my face, and everybody was clapping, and Billy was like, "Get over here." Sorry. And,
Did you know that dude, Gaspar Noé, was actually staying in the villa while we were there? He was.
Are you serious?
Well, I saw I Stand Alone in this very theater.
Did you?
I was like, who the hell is that guy?
He was at the villa and he had some strange hangers on with him.
Sure.
I didn't go near that dude. I was
No,
scared.
no. Jesus Christ.
I don't know if there's anything to follow up with that. I think we should end on that note. So can we have a round of applause?
Thank you, everybody.